Standing by. Go, Councilor.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting, this June meeting of Public Works and Urban Beautification to order. First of all, before I get into the declarations, I want to thank everyone for reorganizing their schedule for yesterday. There was some personal business had to be carried out through the closing of schools and graduations and whatever. Anyway, thank you very much for realigning your activities. First of all, declarations of conflict of interest. None? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
could I just, these are just information items to
Sure.
the manager.
yes.
It's just under the street access bylaw. I just wanted to ask the manager. And then there's also the status of the parking committee that was just, if I can just bring that up under new business.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, it's just for information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else want to make amendments or additions to the, or deletions to the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to the adoption of minutes. We have minutes of Public Works and Urban Beautification Committee of May 25th, and also the City Board of Persons with Disabilities on June the 9th. Do I have a mover for those minutes? Moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Yankoff. All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous, 3-0. Is there any business arising from these previous minutes? Having none, we'll move on to the reports. The first one on the reports is Kent Street lighting upgrade, and I believe Mr. Adams and Shailen will address that issue.
Thank
Go on,
you.
Scott.
Thank you, Chair. We'll let Charlotte start things off with
Sure.
her presentation. And then there is a request and recommendation from Public Works Department for some funding to go along with this project.
Thank you. Shailen, it's all yours.
Yes, and I can introduce Shallon. She is with 9 Yards, who is being contracted out by Discover Charlottetown with this for this project.
Thanks, Scott. Unfortunately, Heidi couldn't be here this morning, but I'm going to take the helm for her. So I'm happy to be back here. Thank you for taking the time. I think everyone's seen this project a few times, but it's gone through quite a few editions of this, and we've worked closely with the fire department, Kent Mitchell, to kind of get this proposal together, something that they would be happy with. So this is kind of working with their recommendations. It's a revised proposal from what you saw last time. So this
Shailen,
is,
just
yes,
excuse me. Mr. Chair, are we not going to have it on the big screen?
Can
we put it up
Is that
because-
possible to put it on the big screen?
Because it could be picked up by our live stream.
I believe this is.
Is this going?
This is being picked up by live stream. If
It
you're
is?
seeing on these monitors,
Just-
then it's on the live
Oh,
stream.
just
is my
wanted to get that
understanding.
corrected. Thank you.
Okay, good. Shailen?
Hi, there we go. What you're seeing here is an overall bird's eye view of Kent Street. So there's two sections. Can you guys see that if I do that? Oh, cool. So there's two sections of lights in locations that were recommended by the fire department. And then along the street, we're replacing all the light poles and the infrastructure that goes along with those light poles to a more contemporary fixture that would support new banners and new projectors. You can see these little blue circles that are on the sidewalk. These are proposed projectors that could be programmed to have different patterns and lighting on the sidewalk. They wouldn't actually shine onto the street because that would be a vehicle hazard. And then the other part of this is to add some interesting landscaping on the four corners of the street. And then at the front is this archway, which this is just kind of a placeholder for now. It's not the actual design of the arch. So that's just an overview of that, showing all the different elements that are part of this overall plan for Kent Street. And this is just a couple renderings just to kind of jog your memory of what we brought in last time. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
So this is just basically starting right here at City Hall and going down, right?
The installation,
Yeah.
it would start at the corner of Great George and Kent
Oh, great job,
to
okay.
Prince. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Craft Beer Corner down to Hunter's Corner.
Exactly, okay,
Yeah,
sorry, thank you.
no problem. These are just some inspiration images that the elements were sort of based on, just to get visual idea of what we're trying to do. And the idea is still that these overhead lights would have some things that could be changed out over time for seasons or events or festivals. And this is looking at different lighting strategies or banners for the new light poles. And those are the projectors that would project light on the sidewalk. So there's many different patterns that you can have. So basically where we are now, I'm actually meeting with the fire department tomorrow to review the final plans. We've actually gone ahead and put a lot more detail into this. So we've been working with Elliot Coles from Coles Associates on the electrical, and I know he's done a lot of work with Scott. And then we have also been working with Tara Callahan. She's with a landscaping architecture firm on the island. So they've gone and done construction drawings that we can actually build from. So based on costs and the funding that we have in place, we've decided to break it into a few different phases. And phase one is just the electrical portion that you saw in that concept presentation. So just to give you an idea, these are the drawings that would actually go out to tender. But you'll see the new lighting poles that are proposed. And I'm gonna show you guys the cost breakdown, but a big part of the cost of the electrical is the replacement of this infrastructure. So it's the lighting poles and also the concrete upstands that support those lighting poles. And we do have to replace those. We had a structural engineer review it in order to support the lights overhead. It needs a different size base. And upon inspection, we've also been told by Coles that these are going to have to be replaced in the future regardless. They're kind of getting a bit rough, so we think it's doing our due diligence to replace all of them now. So this is just kind of looking at the details of how that would work. You can see there's like a place for a banner, and there's an outlet to plug in future electrical, and you can also see the little projector, at the top there. There's a little projector proposed for each pole. And this is the overall plan. So those are the two sections of overhead lighting that you'll see. And then these are supported, or the light poles are at each corner of those. And then there's a support pole in between. We're still figuring out where we're going to put the controls for this. CADC has offered that we could potentially put it in the parking garage electrical room on Kent Street. But that still has to be sorted out if there's enough space and that sort of thing. So, and those are just future details. These will still have quick release mechanisms and everything that we kind of illustrated before. And that's just a look at the lighting pole. So it's quite a sleek contemporary fixture that we're proposing. So it's different from what is in Charlottetown now, but this street will sort of have its own identity. It was kind of the idea from the beginning. There will be a pole that extends above this to suspend the lighting pole. So basically the linear pole you see will just come up to the height so that we can get the 18-foot clear above the street. So this is a look at the cost breakdown. So you'll see a good chunk of the cost is in the replacement of the lighting standards and the concrete supports. So we're looking at somewhere in the range of $250 for just this phase one. And I just highlighted this for the ask. So we already have 110 committed from ACOA, 60 from Innovation PEI, and then we've been talking back and forth, and I won't speak for Scott on what budgets he has available, but this was kind of the number that we tossed out to help with replacement of that infrastructure so that we can cover phase one. And I don't know, Scott, do you want to chime in now or do you want me to show? I did bring the landscaping of phase 2 just to show you guys for interest, even though we don't have the funding for that portion yet, but.
Yeah, I can chime in just quickly here while we're talking about it. The reason why we, from Public Works side of things, thought it was great to contribute to this project, we are replacing the existing lighting on the street, which is quite old. It's one of the first installments, I'm told, of the old-fashioned lanterns in the city. So they are nearing the end of their lifespan, and as Shallon noted, the condition is getting weary. So we thought, as part of the project, I think even in the beginning, you kind of thought we would integrate that somehow with the new design. And as more we looked at it, it just didn't make sense to keep the old-fashioned with the new kind of vibe that we're trying to create on the street. So we worked with Shallon and her team to say, let's actually come up with a plan that integrates all these elements together so that we reduce the number of poles and the amount of infrastructure that actually needs to happen or go on the street. And $125,000 is a extremely reasonable number considering the prices right now for lighting upgrades in the city. As we probably all remember the last time that we tried to do some old-fashioned lighting. I think it was like 4 or 5 poles, and it was almost $90,000 to do that kind of work. So this is a great bang for our buck, in considering the prices of materials and labor at the moment.
Shallon, the Kent Street, the costings here, it's for electrical is $218,000, professional fees $40,000, HST of course $36.4 thousand for $294. Is there any, like, what about the hardware? Is there anything else that is going to cost money other than those 3 things or 2 things plus the tax?
Shouldn't be, all the labor and everything was included in that cost that Coles did.
Okay.
So that's kind of all inclusive of all the wiring, conduit, basically everything that's needed for phase 2 should be looped into there. We did add the professional fees into this budget just because Heidi needs to cover what kind of was already spent
Okay.
to get to this point. So the professional fees that are indicated here actually includes landscaping design fees, which was already done, and electrical and
Okay, so
architectural.
there's no other fees connected to that phase? It's phase 1 or phase 2?
This is all phase 1 except the professional fees are for both phases because that work was already done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Just a couple questions. Is there a phase 3? Or is this it?
Phase 3 was meant to be the archway. We've kind of tabled that for now just because we don't even have money for phase 2. So we're trying to do in phase 2 just some interesting trees that would sort of signal the entrance to that street for now. And then if we do get money for phase 3, it would be just the archway onto that street.
And just to follow up, what happened to the original plan that the city would take over the infrastructure when it was completed and pay for that each year? But so this is a new ask, this $125,000. Is that correct? Because that was never in the original plan. It was that the city would take it over and then we would maintain it going forward. Is that right?
That's
Or-
correct, Elena. It's a new ask. And I think the reason for that was originally we weren't planning to replace all the city infrastructure. That's kind of come to light in this latest proposal. So we're enduring the cost of the lighting and the concrete posts that we didn't have in the original proposal.
And just a follow-up question, if I could, Chair. For us to circle back to worst first, is Kent Street, when we talk about replacing infrastructure, lighting, are we still applying the same principle to worst first? Like, is Kent Street the worst one to be replacing? I just, we're coming out of pandemic. There's a lot of money needs to be spent. I mean, we're in a housing crisis. I just want to make sure we get this right. And although this is going to be incredibly beautiful for the downtown, I just want to make sure that we're spending our dollars correctly and being mindful of the taxpayers' money.
So we have a number of infrastructures that are roughly this age, and again, they're all roughly same condition. So they're all kind of at the top priority. This is one area, again, it is an older Like I said, I believe it is the first installment of the Old Fashions because it's in front of the Maritime Electric Building, and that was the first location. So based on age and initial condition assessment done by Coles and Associates, it does meet that criteria. That is probably one of the first areas that we should address in terms of replacement of our old-fashioned lanterns.
Okay, any other questions of Shallon or of Mr. Adams? Ms. Waddell?
The price of phase, you're going to show us phase two and some of the pictures of what you're planning for phase two, and do you have any costing for phase two as well?
Yes, I do. I can go through it quickly just to show you guys.
Mr. Chair, just before we do that, I just want to go back to phase one. So, Scott, originally we were looking at an investment when we first spoke about this with Heidi and Heidi's Inn and Discovery Charlottetown. Was it 40,000 for the maintenance?
I believe that was we had really no actual clue of what that annual cost would be to do that work. So I think we just said, at most it would cost this amount. That would be the max we would spend until we got used to it each year and know, what was expected. But yes, I think you're correct. That was roughly the original
For the
amount.
maintenance?
Yeah.
And Shannon, Mr. Chair, if you look at the lighting, I'm just looking at Google Maps. So the posts that are there are the heritage lamps, and Mr. Adams is correct. They were probably installed at the beginning there with this whole program that was started by the councillor from the area in Ward 1. So they would be maybe, height-wise, I'm saying 15 feet high, the current lamps.
Mm-hmm.
The new lamps will be how high? I didn't do a quick measurement of what's on the drawings.
The lamps themselves will be at a similar height, but the pole will extend up beyond that to support the hanging lights to get the minimum clearance that Public Works requested. Yeah.
So, Shannon, I know you're an architect and Mr. Adams is the engineer, but you know that the pole on that, these poles will have to be, if you look at the poles they use for going across the Abiga Crossing or Confederation Bridge, they're steel poles, and they endure a lot of force. This force will be a pole from each side, and that pole I thought was to be between buildings, and we can't do it from building to building on either side. So just the structure, do you use a concrete pole? Is that what Elliot is suggesting, a concrete pole?
It's the foundation of the lighting pole
Right.
that has to be designed by a structural engineer to withstand that force. So they will be different than what's there now, just in terms of size and how deep they go and all of that. That was looked at by a structural engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, so your two pole forces, like they're trying to hold that cable and anything that's on that cable, and you're estimating it to 295 for or 294 for the cost. That's an estimate. Have we looked at our other partners on the street, Maritime Electric? You know that Sarah Lance is overseeing the complete renovation of the Daniel J. I think it's a $75 million project. Has Heidi or her group approached the businesses to ask what's their skin in on the game?
I can't answer that honestly. I don't believe there's any allocation in the funding budgets for contribution from the street owners, but I don't know what the conversations that were had with them were, so.
Look, Mr. Chair, we all like the project right from the start. It's it's the funding arrangement that needs a little more scrutiny. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moving back to Ms. Waddell's question on phase two.
Yes, I'll take you through phase two. And one thing I just did want to mention about the maintenance costs, the project has gone down in scope a lot since the first. So when we said 40,000, that was the time that it took to change out every single strand of light that covered the whole street. We've reduced that amount of lighting by, an eighth, basically. So I would expect that cost would be substantially lower than what we first proposed, just to add that in. Yeah, so phase two is landscaping of the four corners, so basically the two gateways of this block. And this again is an overview. So this is kind of where new Abioko is and craft beer corner on this side. So as I said, in replacement of the arch, at least for now, we're proposing two kind of colorful street trees that would kind of frame that street, kind of signal that you're entering into sort of a new zone. And then you'll see the landscaping complete with benches underneath the trees and in around the corners. This is a loading zone that I did walk the street with Scott a couple months ago, and we sort of identified this. It's a painted out no parking zone next to the DJM building there. So we thought maybe this is a nice place to incorporate some landscaping, put a nice curb around it, and a potential location for bike racks to be in this area. And then again, at the end of the street, it's similar concept. So you'll see this is just kind of zoomed in versions of each corner. So you can see this curved wood is a bench. So it kind of changes in scale and creates this kind of interesting flow. And then there's different variations of planting that our landscape architect picked out some would be more interesting in winter and summer. So you kind of get that nice seasonal area all year long, get some visual interest there. And this is revised, Scott, from what you saw, because we did pull it back a little bit off the street. So those are just zoomed in versions, and I think there's some 3D images here to show you. Yeah, so you can see there, this is the idea of that wood bench, and we looked at doing some kind of vertical walls behind that would be kind of slanted, so you could have some areas that were kind of more comfortable to sit at, and that would kind of form the curb all the way around these areas. That's just a look at some of the planting. And these are the visual images for inspiration. I think there's still some things we have to work out with Scott in terms of final surfaces. We had looked at doing some thermoplastic along the crosswalk pedestrian ways across the street. But we need to make sure that works with, it's not a vehicle hazard and that sort of thing. So we're still working through the details on that. There was also this idea, which we're pretty excited about, incorporating something interactive in these areas. So for example, this was an example in Victoria, BC of a singing tree. And so you could go and sing to the tree or play music and it would actually perform a light show for you. So we've been talking to these, some of the people that do this work, and like one of the ideas was that you can actually like swipe your credit card and donate to like a good cause, and then it would like perform a lighting show for you. So we really want to incorporate that into this somehow and make it really interactive for pedestrians walking along the street. So we're hoping to get some funding for phase 2, because I think this is important to make this whole concept come together. But yeah, that's where we're at for that.
Okay, thank you, Shallon. Any questions from anyone else? Councillor Yankoff?
I have a question for Shallon. Can I take that?
Sure,
right to it? Okay.
sure.
Do you have any idea approximate cost of phase 2?
Oh yeah, sorry. This is the cost estimate for it. So it's 100,000. Basically.
So you've asked for 125 from the city for phase 1. What do you anticipate the ask would be for phase 2?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know that we were proposing to come to the city for an ask for phase 2. I mean, we did have some discussion with Scott about like, would there be an appetite for maintenance and things like that with this planting, or like if this didn't happen till next year, could we maybe carry some of the planting into the city's planting budget or something like that? We thought we had some funding for this already, but we just found out a couple days ago that we didn't get it. So I don't know what the route to get the funding on this is going to be. I know if Heidi is behind it, that she will find a way to find the funding for it, but yeah. We really want to see this project happen, so we try to put all our cards in phase one and really see something happen for the fall. That's
Councilor Ramsey?
Yeah, thank you. So getting back to Alana's question too, so basically is all you're looking for is a 125 from the city. Because phase two, you're not, I just want to get it clear in my head, you're not looking for anything, any financial.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just one thing on the funding too, if the work doesn't take place this year, I believe Discover Charlottetown loses the ACOA funding, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, if the work doesn't get off the ground this year, that $110,000 from ACOA is, it goes away.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Anyone else? Shallon, thank,
I
Councilor
just have
Yankoff.
so what are we doing from here? Is this a recommendation to take this to council?
I would assume so.
Is that what you're asking for?
That's correct, yeah.
125.
If it's a consensus at this committee, then we would take a resolution forward to the next council meeting for final approval from council.
I would expect that the council would probably want a more detailed report of what the maintenance would be each year. It's just my thoughts. It's such a beautiful idea. I'm just so hesitant because of coming out of a pandemic, our housing crisis, our homelessness. I mean, there's just so many things happening that need attention in the city, and I mean, this is a beautiful revitalization plan. I'm just really hesitant to support it.
Thank you, Councilor Yankoff. Anyone else?
Yeah. Mr. Chair. In Halifax, I always, is it, what's the street they did over there? It's a pedestrian. No, it's not
Argyle.
Argyle. So you've seen that example, right? And they do have the post and the lighting and so forth. Shannon, do we know if it was completely funded by the city of Halifax, or was there a buy-in from ACOA, from Destination Halifax, from the businesses? And I'm sure other municipalities in the region have done the same, has taken this approach. Any background info?
I really don't know. I'm not sure how that was funded. It was a much bigger project.
Very big, very big. Plus the convention center was going up there too.
I think that was what spearheaded a lot of it, was the convention center project. So I'm only speculating, but I believe the city covered a lot of the costs because it was kind of the revitalization of the area as part of the convention center construction as well.
So Scott, as you said, this goes from here to council. No, I think the process is that it goes from here to finance.
Correct. Yes, the resolution will go to finance for their support and then on to council. That's correct.
Yeah. Again, look, all of us have been pushing this project, Shaylin. It's a great project. It's, again, the funding, and I believe the 40,000 for the maintenance might be a little lesser, but we'll continue. That will be a responsibility of the city, correct?
Yes, that was the idea. And in terms of maintenance, I don't see this needing much maintenance. It's the changing out of the lights that was the cost that was proposed to be by the city. So yeah, we can provide a rough number on what that would be. We just took the hourly rate. We talked to a sign company because they'd probably be the ones changing it out. How many men for how many hours would it take to do so many strands? So I think we could come to a number that's much less than that. Yeah.
And just to conclude, Mr. Chair, this project it's gone through a lot of hoops and crossed a lot of hurdles, and big credit to Heidi Zinn and Shaylin and just continuing to push that envelope. So I'm supporting it, but again, we do have some concerns about the funding, and I know Scott, it's a capitalized project. It's not our operation, so it's money that
That's correct.
We'll borrow and pay over the amortization of the loan. But again, it goes to finance. It'll be another discussion, and then hopefully off to council. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So that pretty well wraps it up for this issue, I think, unless you have anything else, Shaylin.
We would need a motion from this committee to send a resolution forward.
Do you want to wait until the end of the meeting and do any other resolutions that may come up, or Would you like to do it now?
Probably should just do it now, so
Okay.
that for the minutes, it's all together in the minutes.
I want to move a resolution to forward it right on to finance.
Okay, it's moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Councillor Ramsey, that the, for lack of a better word, the light show or the light works on Kent Street between Prince and Great George be, the request being $125,000 from the city of Charlottetown as their share, be moved on to Finance Committee for consideration. Any discussion on that issue? That's roughly said. All those in favor of the recommendation? All those opposed? The count is 2-1 in favor. Thank you. Thank you, Shale.
And just to clarify, we'll see how this all plays out in terms of finance and council. I'm just really hesitant. There's just a lot of things in the downtown that need to be addressed, and I just concerned that $125,000 could certainly address some of our immediate concerns. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Yankoff. Can we move on to Charlottetown Historic District Plan?
Just one thing on that. So the gentleman, Aaron Hansen from CADC, is supposed to join us. He did have a meeting right at 9. He should be here shortly. So if you don't mind, can we skip to the next item, and
Sure.
then we'll go back to that item once Aaron's
Great.
here, as he's more familiar with the overall project than I am.
All right, so we can move on to McKay Drive, Stormwater.
Thank you, Chair. So this has been a bit of a matter ongoing for a little while. If you probably can see there's a plan here showing the property and the proposed easement. So a little backstory on this. This is an area, a part of Charlottetown, that was pre-amalgamation. Storm water was flowing through private property. I think the reason why it was just a low spot, and that's where it naturally was occurring, and no one ever adjusted it from a safety perspective, and the landowner at the time never brought anything forward. So it was just an item that was never addressed. We were approached last year by one of the property owners who has worked with the other impacted property owners. Because again, these properties are vacant right now, but they're looking at developing them. So we were approached by the developer to work together and to pipe the system through the properties, but to get it where it needs to go. But it's through a pipe network so that it's not, so that they can reclaim a lot of the land that this stormwater system was using, so that they can develop it. Of course, we're low on available land in prime locations of the city, and that's why they're developing it. So they approached us last year. Under advisement from the former CAO at the time, we started discussions and said, we would look at a cost share option, as that was the developer approached us and said they would cost share because there's a value to them to have it relocated as well. They're also willing to give us the easements for the new storm pipe, and they've kind of led the charge on it. So if we go to the information sheet or the report. So the cost to the city would be $110,975, all taxes included. That would be our share of the project, and that gets the pipe through. I believe it's 3 lots in total. And then, like I say, the homeowner is taking on, or the developer is taking on, all of additional costs and any other risk associated with the final installation with this project. So we're recommending from Public Works Department that this would come from our existing capital budget. We do have the funds available to do this. So there's no increase to the capital budget, and at the end of the day, this saves us a lot of headaches in the future. Again, we are flowing stormwater on private property. At the time, it was never a concern, but the developer would like to develop their land, and I don't disagree with them on that. So we think it's a good agreement in terms of cost sharing this expenditure.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Any questions or
Yes.
concerns?
Scott, when you're saying cost, thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott, when you're saying cost sharing, is that 50-50 or is that 25-75?
It's so that's a great question, Councillor Ramsey. So there are, like I say, there are 3 properties that are involved here. 2 are owned by one individual, and the third was an existing property. You see where there's on Palmer's Lane, there's a property there. So that homeowner, you know, they've had this large ditch and it has overflowed. I'm told that from time to time. They don't want to pay any amount of money, but they're willing to give us the easement, the official easement. So we would cover that full cost. Then through what you see, lot 20-1, that is a 50-50 cost share of that pipe through that. It's an L shape through that property. And then there's a pipe that goes under McKay Drive, and then there's another lot that pipe goes on to connect into an existing stormwater system. The developer will take that cost solely on himself, and that's $100,000, I believe, on that lot. So, seeing that he's willing to take the full cost of that other lot, if the city takes the full cost of the pipe on through the lot on Palmer's Lane, and then we cost share that middle lot, it is roughly 50-50, yes.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just looking at the Google Maps, so when I come off Palmer's Lane, turn onto McKay Drive, I'm coming off St. Peter's Road,
Correct.
onto Palmer's Lane, turn north on McKay, come around the bend, right?
Correct.
So is that storm sewer that's going across McKay Drive, is that going into that open field?
I believe that's the lot. If I'm maybe I'll come over and just check here, see where you're looking at.
Is that the field across from the church, your worship?
No, church is,
So it is.
there's the field right there.
No, it's not going through there. No,
So
it is. So it is where it's right here, I believe.
This is Palmer's Lane here.
Yeah, it is. So where's the vacant lot? So the vacant lot's here.
Yeah.
So it's coming here, here, here.
Okay.
Is where it's going. That's
Okay,
correct. Yeah.
so it's not really covering ditches, it's just going through the property,
Well,
correct?
what's happening right now? It's open ditch through there. So
Okay.
it's
Gotcha,
not controlled on this vacant land. There's a bit of a ditch there,
Gotcha.
but it's not
Okay.
really controlled.
just wanted a clarification, thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Yankoff?
Thank you. I don't know if something like this has ever come up in my time on council, and I'm just wondering, is this a best practice? Is this something that the city often does, is cost share with developers when it comes to this particular situation? Yeah? Okay, great.
Yeah, this has happened a few times since I've been here, and Dawn has been here long before me, and I know she's been involved in a number of those. It's great to do these partnerships. There's buy-in from both the landowner and they're involved in the process, so it's much easier when they're really involved and willing to work with us. It makes our life a lot easier versus, we're working with a developer or a homeowner that's a bit resistant. So this has been a great discussion, and they've been great to work with up to this point.
And Mr. Chair, just a point of information, I think our interim CAO knows that back in early 2000, we were starting to fill in ditches, but we did change our development bylaw, zoning development bylaw, for any new subdivisions. It was a requirement of the contractor or the developer to fill in the ditches. And I think this is basically the same situation, but it's cost shared because it's an existing property that they wish to develop, correct?
It is, and exactly. It's an existing issue. It's been flowing on the private land for I don't know how long, and just no one has. It hasn't bothered anyone to date, but now they'd like to reclaim that land for development a lot. Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, are we ready for a recommendation to finance? Do I have a mover? Oh, moved by Mayor Brown, second by Councilor Ramsey, that the application for ditch and filler, whatever it would be referred to,
So you say you have the money, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
Scott,
yeah.
there's money in the capital budget for this.
We have funds available in the capital budget to cover
So does it
this.
still
Yep.
have to go to finance, Donna?
It would still have to go, part of our resolution process for any purchases or fund transfer still has to go through.
But if the
finance.
money's already there, and you're not asking for, I mean, for new money, so like, why would it even bother going to
Because
finance?
capital is not there, he's gonna borrow it.
It is there, though, he's saying.
It's within,
Oh, sorry.
it's within his capital budget.
Right.
So I think it was an operating, if he was coming out of his operating budget to buy a new,
Widget.
widget, it wouldn't have to go to finance because he would have, but because it's it's a
All capital.
lump
Oh, yeah.
sum of capital money, it goes to finance for consultation there before it goes to council.
with the lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mayor Brown has moved a recommendation that the committee support the recommendation to cost share the costs for the installation of a new storm line between Palmer's Lane and McKay Drive at a cost of $110,975, all taxes included, and that a resolution shall be brought forward at the next, will be forwarded to the Finance Committee. Okay? Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Ramsey has seconded it. Any more discussion on that particular recommendation? All those in favor? All those opposed? Passes 3-0. Thank you. Moving right along. We're going to go to our favorite every monthly projects update.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, so again, we like to bring this every month to give you guys a bit of a update of where we're at with our capital projects. There's lots on the go. And again, if there's anything you folks would like to see on this report, please let us know. This is just what we assume that you would like to see. But again, if there is additional information that we could try to provide, we will definitely make that adjustment. We want to get this form perfect so that it's clear to everyone on council and the public on where we're at with projects and what information that we want readily available. But just going through everything, we're making great progress on a lot of major capital projects. We'll just start at the very top. I'll just start with Belmont Street sidewalks. That project's ongoing as we speak, and they're making great progress. We do expect them to be done by the end of the month. As of right now, Pond Street, I believe they're out there today paving that. So we're finalizing that project, and everything should be cleaned up on that before the long weekend as well. In terms of the Public Works building, things are moving along as we speak. I believe some of the building structure has started to show up, and there's other activities on the going, such as well drilling for geothermal and various land. There's a retaining wall and other site work ongoing. Fire Station 3 is still in design. Going down to major street works, Harley Street, we started on the 20th, making great progress there. They're working on the first half of the road now, and then we'll switch over once they get to the halfway point and start on the St. Peter's Road end, my apologies. Garfield Street, we're ongoing right now. We expect the completion to be, last week calculated somewhere around the July 15th date is where we're aiming for at this time. A bit of a hold up on that project with getting water quality tests. That's always a challenge. Especially the longer line that you have brand new, the harder it is to chlorinate and get it cleaned out and get a clean bill or clean record from environment. But we're making great headway on that project now. Eastern Gateway Phase 1, we're a bit of a standstill, unfortunately, at that project right now, as we're still waiting to meet with the province in regards to determining what their plans are in the area of the Hillsborough Bridge. But we expect to have that information shortly. Street resurfacing has been awarded, and I believe they're going to be starting some work this week. Ken's Corner upgrades, other than some minor cleanups, the lights are now operational as of yesterday. And so far, everything is operating well. We have had no concerns yet. And it definitely changed the aesthetics and the and the view of all the signals when you approach that intersection. So we're quite pleased with how that project turned out.
Mr. Adams, on that particular issue, I was through them this morning, and early in the morning, you can get kind of an appreciation of where you're supposed to go. When you're coming up Houston Street, heading, say, to Escher Street, and you have a choice. You only have two choices. You either go straight through Houston or bear a little bit left and go out along Worth Avenue. You're not permitted to turn right.
No, you can turn. You're always permitted to turn right. Yep.
That's not what it indicated this morning. I'm gonna have to recheck that.
Yeah, have a look. Have a look. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure. Are you talking road markings or the arrow?
Just the lights.
Okay. Is it a green
It says
ball or a
straight
green arrow?
Straight ahead.
Yeah.
A green this way.
Mm-hmm.
Red, no.
Okay. Well,
Red arrow.
I'll have to double check everything and
I could be
appreciate
wrong.
that. So you're coming from Houston towards.
You're heading east.
east. Okay. Okay.
And
I'll double
indicated
check.
to me
Yes.
this morning that, yeah, you can go straight ahead, or you can go to Birchwood High School if you want, but you can't turn right to go down to workers' compensation.
Okay. And you should be able to. So I'm not sure what that is. So we'll double check and
Thank
correct
you.
anything. Thank you.
Sure.
Remind me, what happened to the idea that you weren't going to be able to go down Houston Street, had to circle around?
So that was the original concept, just based on public feedback and what we brought to the committee as well. It was, I believe, the consensus at the time. It just wasn't the right option for that intersection. Again, there's a lot of concerns on accessing Houston, heading towards, heading east, down that way on Houston Street, limiting that access. There was concerns from A1 Vacuum, ADL, all those folks as well. So at that time, we brought it back to committee, I believe, and it was recommended to look at an alternate option for this intersection.
And just as a follow-up, so we really then haven't dealt with the speeding issue in that little section then that I know the residents were concerned about. So would we be doing anything along that first block of Houston when you go through those new lights to at least calm the traffic for the residents that are there? Because those are the complaints that I hear, is people just pick up the speed and they just drive it like it's stolen. Yeah.
And you're talking like heading from the downtown core
Yes.
on Houston towards, out. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, we can definitely look at that as well. That's, yeah. And one thing, we don't like to do a whole bunch of things all at once. You do one approach, monitor, evaluate, act. And then you do that cyclic, or do that circle that you've probably seen everywhere before. That's what we like to try to do. So it's something we'll keep in mind this summer as we do some traffic studies and see what's going on. Continuing on, so Short Street Extension, that work has been awarded. I'm just waiting for a schedule from the contractor. It's a pretty small little project, so once they get there, there's no water and sewer work to be done, so it's a pretty quick little job. Once we get that information, we'll share that with council. Beach Street, Park Street Connector, we have the preliminary design done for that. We're just doing a final review and getting that back to the consultant so that we can get our tender documents and get that tendered out. The roundabout has been awarded. I think we have a great compromise on the AT concerns, and so we're moving ahead with that project as we speak.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question on that?
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Adams, last night or Tuesday night, the Mayor's Task Force on Active Transportation met, and I think you have the AT pathway at 1.5 meters. There was a suggestion, the circumference in the middle, can that be, you can't shrink that because of engineering issues or because of...
Correct. Because of the number of, this is what was explained to me, because I don't do the dimensions and all that. I leave that to our consultant. But when they put in what we call the turning movements for the truck rate turning radiuses, the inside diameter is what it has to be able to allow for trucks to maneuver in and out. And where this roundabout's unique, we don't have that truck apron in the middle that we're typically used to seeing a lot of our other roundabouts, that concrete pad. We did not go with that design because of how we also had to stretch the roundabout out a little bit, because if you look at the aerial view of it, it's a bit of an oval in the center, and that reason for that design is so that we can capture all 5 legs of the intersection. If we kept it as a circle or a true circle, we would have had an issue with the how Belvedere Avenue and how Brackley Point Road integrate into that roundabout. They would have been too close to each other to function properly. So they had to, so that was essentially what they had to do. They had to start with the oval and stretch it out, and then they had to work with the diameters accordingly. And so that's where we ended up. There's, last I talked to them, there's really no adjustment to that center bulb, because we'll start getting into those issues with transport trucks.
So, Mr. Adams, so the entry exit points for that roundabout, it'll be Falconwood Drive, St. Peter's Road from 2 directions, east-west, Brackley Point Road, Belvedere Avenue.
That's correct. Yeah, so
Okay.
5 legs. Yeah.
And again, the 1.5 is all you can, and there will be no sidewalk. It'll be an active transportation.
Exactly, and as I said during the last council meeting, it's unfortunate when we started this project back in 2008, right? There was not a push for AT back then, and so they looked at the dimensions of the roundabout, and then they said, okay, we definitely have to have a sidewalk around there, so we would put a standard 1.5 meter sidewalk around there, and then that was what was the property line essentially that we said, okay, we wouldn't take no more than we needed to from a lot of these various pieces of land that we had to buy. And so that's really constraining us is like in a few areas we are right up against the property line, like on the Vogue Optical corner. There's the Muffler Center, we're right up the property line there. Esso, there's really no more room. We couldn't take any more room from Esso, or we would have been in their parking lot or on top of their fuel tanks underground. So we were really constrained by the existing infrastructure. I would have loved to have been able to widen it, and we are going to double check everything just to make sure. And in areas where we can widen it, we will try to widen it, but make it so it doesn't look too odd out there. But I believe the majority of that width will be 1.5.
Mr. Chair, just the final point on the roundabout, and again, our interim CAO probably remembers that our first roundabout was at the corner of Mount Everett Road and Allen Street. And I think if you look at the pedestrian walkway, we don't have an active transportation pathway. It's a sidewalk, 1.5 meters wide.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Adams, continue.
All right,
please.
so on the second page, sidewalks, as we've awarded a couple locations and delayed a few of them. So Sandstone's been delayed, Lincoln has been awarded, Grafton has been delayed for another year, and Centennial has been awarded. Wedgwood, Westridge, and Wedgwood and Westridge are currently being designed. Under the multi-purpose trail, Grafton Street is designed, but it's a bit on hold because it's in the footprint of the Eastern Gateway project. So until we know exactly where our road and intersections are going to be, we don't want to construct anything because it's likely partly be torn up. The Victoria Park 18 lane design, we do have a draft version of that we will bring to committee at some point in the near future. The Raiders Road section, that is being designed as we speak. I think that one's almost ready to go. I think the Raiders Road and the McCrae Drive, those will be done, and we should have tender documents, I believe, the 1st of July, if I'm not mistaken. And then the last one is the Stormwater Management Beach Grove Road culvert. That has been awarded. We are working with our contractor right now to finalize the schedule, and we're just waiting to hear back on materials. It's really the big holdup, I believe, now. So we should have a schedule shortly on when that's starting, but I believe we'll start in sometime in July with that work.
Mr. Chair, just again, Mr. Adams, Spencer Drive, University Avenue, Confederation Trail, Harborside Engineering, Design is complete, so it, as you said, it'll be going to tender.
So there are a couple like this. There are a couple that are fully designed and were designed starting last year.
Yeah.
Like let me go back here. Sorry. Like the Grafton Street, the Spencer Drive one. Those were designed last year,
Right.
but they're on the shelf rating. We can pull them off the shelf anytime that we want to, but they just didn't get funded for this capital budget.
Spencer Drive didn't get funded?
Not the University Avenue to Confederation Trail section, no.
Oh, because if we complete that, we will have a active transportation pathway from Town Hall in Cornwall into Queen's Arms intersection.
Correct. That's where it is now, and
And then we could cross the street and
The-
there's a sidewalk which could be converted into an active transportation pathway.
actually, we would recommend to put an AT pathway on the existing side, the McDonald's Esso side of the
Okay.
street, because it is a major major collector road in the city.
Right.
And so we don't want people who are trying to access businesses on that south side having to cross from one side to another. Quite dangerous, and there's no sidewalk currently, so we would just extend the multi-use pathway from the Capitol Drive intersection. We would construct it along that side in front of the Esso, McDonald's, Long McQuaid, all those businesses, tie it into the Peter Pan intersection, and then extend it right to the trail. That's correct.
Yeah, and then that trail connects you to the Hillsborough Bridge that can take you over to Stratford.
Absolutely.
So this was not, Spencer Drive was not put in the budget?
No, it wasn't. No. We were waiting for funding from the province to see if we were getting funding for that.
Okay, so that's what we're waiting for. And
Yeah.
is that the same for McRae Drive, East Royalty?
No, McRae was under the 5-year master plan
Okay.
for new construction. So that is fully funded in the capital budget.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And that might be a good column, as I mentioned before. I can put some more notes on if we're waiting for funding or things like that, or if it was in this capital budget or future capital budgets. I'll try to come up with something like that, so it's more self-explanatory.
Is that it for the capital budgets, Mr. Adams?
That's correct. Yeah. So again, and I can just kind of go through the other areas.
Sure.
When you get down to traffic and pedestrian, those are just our typical, purchase of signals or traffic signals or signage. So a lot of those have been, some of them are starting to be spent now. Our sign order just went through. So things like that are coming out of those budgets. The next one is street lighting. So this is where we would take, if approved for Kent Street, this is where we would take the $100,000 of the funds, and we would locate another $25,000 somewhere else in the capital budget. And then in terms of Public Works fleet, we have already we awarded our mechanical sweeper, our loader, bucket truck, and our sidewalk machines. The only thing we're working on now is our 3-ton, a new plow truck and a tractor with a blower for our trails.
And Mr. Chair, just on the fleet.
Yes.
Scott, where is Enterprise Fleet Management on the delivery of the 19 vehicles for this year?
I would have to get that update from you. I'm not sure.
Are they here yet?
No, we haven't received any of that order yet. No.
Does the tender that we have with Enterprise Fleet Management, are there penalties for the days that they do not arrive?
I would have to go back to see. It's whatever was negotiated at the time with the dealer, not Enterprise. Yeah.
No,
So
the
it's-
dealer is only flushing them through for Enterprise Fleet Management. The dealer's not selling them to the city. They're just providing MVI, PDI, and then topping it up with fuel.
Right. But
And that
it-
$100 that they're supplying or providing, I'm sure it's costing the dealer a little more money than that.
Like I say, it's all. I don't know what the terms of those agreements are right now. I don't have those in front of me.
But we don't have the vehicles yet.
No, we don't have the vehicles yet.
When did we order them?
That's a great question. I'd have to go back and check our records.
Could you just follow up in
Certainly.
an email to that? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. That was a up-to-date and interesting presentation.
I just have a,
Yeah.
just to build on what his worship said about the fleet management. Perhaps those questions could be brought the answers to our next special meeting of council, because I believe that this is a discussion item. So maybe if that gives Mr. Adams enough time, that he could have those questions, because I'm sure those are going to come up at our council meeting regardless.
Mr. Chair, is that something that we can note in the minutes to make that happen?
Oh,
If
I
that's
would
possible.
assume the next special meeting we have at council, but, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You can make a note that,
Yeah.
that,
And just lastly, under municipal buildings,
Yes.
we did talk about a elevator for Hillsborough Hall.
Yep.
And I know we have the roofing 90% completed for City Hall.
Yeah.
Are we doing the next 10% over a week, 2 weeks? Do we know? Like,
So, yes.
he's saying 90% is done, so
yeah.
where's the next 10%?
Yeah, so with the roof, it's been weather, unfortunately, the past couple of weeks. We need to make sure everything dries out. We did have
Come on in.
we did have a couple minor leaks, unfortunately, but they have been all corrected. And I believe the last rainfall, it seemed like we have gotten everything. So yeah, it's just the final roofing. And I know there's a big push from the contractor as well. They want to get finished and out of here and at least the scaffolding down by July, because they pay monthly. And I'm sure, as you're well aware, it's extremely costly rental per month, and it is a monthly rental. So I think they're putting on a push right now to get that all gone by July 1st. Don't quote me on that one, but that was just last discussions we've had.
Oh, no, Mr. Adams, you will be quoted on that. This is a live stream, so you were quoted. We will follow up, Mr. Chair.
And in regards to the elevator at Hillsborough Community Hall, so right now it's a lot bigger issue than we currently thought. So we are going to engineering services because we thought we could find room within the 16 footprint. It's not looking like that, so we got to build an addition. So we're going out to engineering services right now. And the goal would be engineering services budget documents all done by Christmas-ish, just in time for future capital budget discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
One question,
Oh,
Mr.
sorry,
Chair.
Councilor Ramsey.
I'm a little, Hillsborough Park, why does it need an elevator?
The reason why there is 2 floors, and we've had a number of meetings there, and there was one meeting regard, I believe, active transportation, if I'm not mistaken, and there is a bit of a chairlift there, but it's not accessible for all users, and so there was a strong push from the community to make that building accessible for all users. We looked at a few other options. There are kind of like chairlifts, but are flatbed, but again, they're not, when you look at it from every angle in terms of all ages and abilities, they're not fully user friendly either. The only true all ages and abilities use is an elevator, and so that's why we're making that recommendation to go design that and then install one at a later date.
Okay, because that'd be the only community center that we have an elevator in, correct?
We have one over the fire hall.
No, West Royal doesn't have an elevator.
Elevator.
Did they?
Yeah, there's an elevator in West Royalty. Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
And Hillsborough Park, or Malcolm Dara, it has one too, doesn't it?
As you know, being a graduate from UPEI,
Yes.
Memorial Hall, which was also a residence, when it was converted over to the Faculty of Education, they did provide a ramp on the outside, and this was way long before accessibility was, it wasn't being pushed by local, provincial, federal governments. It's a requirement today. We have to make our buildings totally accessible, and it's too bad that we had to find that out at a launch of our active transportation pathway that runs parallel to the arterial highway, that the chair of the active transportation pathway couldn't get up to the second level of the, he did get up with a lot of assistance. Thank you, Mr.
Not
Chair.
good. Thank you, Your Worship. Can we move on now? Mr. Aaron Hansen has joined us. I think Aaron's going to talk a bit about some work being done, or the proposed work being done around Charlottetown going to a public meeting. So the floor is yours, Aaron.
All right. So I believe you'll be able to see the presentation on your screen there, and should be a remote in front of you.
Yep. Yeah.
I believe you can use that. That's your clicker that will go through each page. There, maybe not. There we go.
On on. Test, test, test. Hi, Donna. Welcome back. You thought you were gone.
A lot of people did. Yourself,
Yeah.
you showed up.
Well, we're lucky that you were in a position to come back and help and bridge gaps. So I'm here today to chat with everybody about our Province House Historic District. That would be, let's see if, well, I'll just kind of go through here. So there was a lot of moving parts happening in and around Province House, as you all know. And I did give all the councillors one of these books when we finished it a year and a half ago or so. Don, I'll pass this to you. It's basically their report. We turned it into a nice coffee table book. It's actually nice to look at.
And just while Aaron returns to chair, the reason why this is here, it hasn't been in front of council as a package yet. But because it impacts a lot of public works infrastructure, we thought it was best to come through this committee. It will touch on other committees, of course, economic development, water and sewer, because there'll be upgrades and all that. But mostly it's surface infrastructure that is really the big change. And we're coming here so that we can get support from this committee to move this file forward. To at least at a minimum go to a public meeting and gain some public input to make some final changes or make adjustments to the plan. So
Yes, Mr. Scott, Mr. Adams, the target this morning is the public meeting.
that's correct. Is to get that plan underway.
I got you. Go ahead,
Okay,
Aaron.
so in an effort to gain support of this committee and then hopefully on to council for their support as well, I'll just do a quick run through what I got here. This may be a refresher for some. So we had Province House undergoing $100 million plus restoration. We had the library jumping across the street into a $16 million redone space in the Dominion building. And we have the Confederation Center of the Arts contemplating a $40 to $80 million renovation of their facility. So given all that money being spent in this general area in now and in the coming few years, we thought it might be best to get in front of the streets and all the supporting infrastructure around them so that things are not done piecemeal and we have an overarching kind of vision that we can all shoot towards. So that was kind of the origins of why this project came to be. So there's just an aerial. You got the 100 million at Province House, 40 to 80 at Confed, 16 million across the road. So given that all that investment, it's just proven for us to be on the ball. This is straight down at it, so it makes an L shape, the project area. It's the Confederation Center's property, Province House property up to Church Street, and then going down Great George to Sydney. So it kind of makes an L-shaped project area. Fathom Studio did the report, and it was heavy on consultation. So they did stakeholders that were around the table the whole time: Parks Canada, Confed Center of the Arts, Legislative Assembly, the City of Charlottetown with Alex Forbes, Province of PEI with Alan Maynard, Merchants Association with Sean Murphy and Kevin Murphy and those folks. All the property owners were invited. The church was invited. Public transit was consulted. And then we had public consultations with the general public as well. The fire department was consulted. The delivery companies that deliver to the merchants on Victoria Row were consulted. What else was there? I guess that's in terms of consultation. That's how, everyone that was talked to. This was the goal. We needed 3D renderings. We wanted it to fly through, all this stuff to help potential funders and partners see it. The inspiration, in large part, was that main drag in Halifax. It's a pedestrian-friendly street with no barriers. There's no curbs. There's a center trench drain down in the top left there. You see it. There's a center trench drain that the storm sewer utilizes. So there's no more catch basins with curbs and curb and gutter, none of that stuff. And it's just completely accessible from one side to the other with no barriers. They walked all around Charlottetown for inspiration in terms of finishes and all that kind of stuff. So there's just some general pictures of the things that influenced Fathom in their designs. They did a historical deep dive into Province House grounds. So they were looking into all the history and everything they did there. We had a business owners session, a general public session, and an online survey. So the point I'm trying to make is that it was heavily vetted and heavily run through the people that matter. Guiding principles being a walkable area, shared streets, connected to nature and history. There was some talk about the narrative around our native friends and how do we bring them into the fold and let them have a part here to showcase some of their things. And then creating a bit of a district. So when you enter this area, you know you are entering somewhere, and that's done through the finishes, the stones they use for the ground, little corner entranceways, which you'll see images of in a minute. The Province House. So the image we're looking at now, it's kind of half of the project area, and you can kind of get a picture. It's really the perimeter of the Province House and Confederation Centre of the Arts block, with Victoria Row getting a better treatment. All the same types of unit pavers, street furniture, all the light fixtures, all that kind of stuff all matches so that you know you're in a certain area. This is Victoria Row, closer to Queen, and you'll see it's, and an important thing to keep in mind is this is an overarching kind of guiding principle. It's not, this is the design. Each individual project would still go through its own design process, and this document would be one of the inspirations. So don't get caught up on, well, I don't like that stone, or I don't like that where those tables are, because this is just a kind of guiding principle. The lines that cross the street there all align with architectural features on the buildings. So windows and columns, that's why you see the stripes going across the road. You'll notice that the patios for the various businesses on that road now hug the buildings, and the sidewalk is moved to the outside of the patios. And I think there's a cross section coming up. This is the other end of Victoria Row. If I can go back, yeah. You'll also notice the stage is changed. The stairs up to the Confederation Center's deck are changed. They've even, since this has been done, they've contemplated their loading dock for the Confed Center. You know, there's that ramp that goes down. They're now talking about changing the orientation so that it comes in off of Queen and not off of Victoria Row. And that's all cited about ease of use, disrupting Victoria Row when shows roll in. Where do you put these big trucks after they offload? These kinds of questions. That's very much a Confed Center decision. At the time we did this, the talk was that it was staying as is. It was still going to be there, but not anymore. At the very far right there, you see future entrance block. So the Confed Center is contemplating making that entrance a ground level entrance, not one where you immediately go downstairs to the basement. And that's going to be more of a proper entrance to the theater. So, but that's part of their project. We just kind of noted it here that it's about to happen. You can see the trench drain down the center of the drive lane. So all the street will be sloped to the center, and that's where it will catch all the stormwater. It's tied into the tree root cells, so stormwater helps water the trees, which is a great thing. We don't have to use our scarce water supply here in the city to water trees and stuff when the stormwater can do it itself. You'll notice on the Confed Center property, there's a sculpture garden, and that's been kind of chitter-chatted to be a spot where we can showcase Indigenous art and sculpture. That's on their property again, so that would happen when the Confed Center clicks go on their reno. So this bleeds right out into, here's the cross section of Great George, of Victoria Row, sorry. The top is what we have now. You can see the pedestrians walk along the buildings. We have trees and seating outside of that, the drive lane, sidewalk, and then you get into the Confed property. And the reconfigured is the lower one. So we have the patios right against the building, then the sidewalk, and then the trees, then the drive lane, which is of course pedestrian in summer months. And then we get onto a new stage and whatnot on the left side of the street. And these are just images. These are just to help you visualize it. You'll notice on the left for the Confed Center by the stage, there's kind of a big grayed out box, and that's a space holder for their new entrance. Now, we don't know what it will look like, but we just defined the space that it will occupy. And it may look a little different than that too. And from the other end. So you'll see they show the drive lane with just a change in bricks that are used. And then right under that guy's feet is the trench drain down the center. So everything will drain to that center point. And you'll notice in the bottom left, they have like a stone thing that says, I think, Morris. So they were putting the kind of the names of the buildings on these little place markers. They act as seats as well. This is Sydney Street we're looking at next. They have an overhead treatment they had designed. And I think you can see a little bit there what it will look like from the street. And those are meant to mimic the window panes of the historic buildings all around it. And this is a year-round, they're suggesting a year-round installment. They're plexiglass, they're not glass, so they won't break or shatter. But yeah, they would stay up and of course have kind of a quick release system for the fire department so that you can, in the event of an issue, you can take them down fast. The other challenge on this block is the fact that we have a private parking lot halfway down the street and really zero commercial for half the street. We have the church on one side and parking lots on the other. So how do you maintain access to the parking lots while making it a pedestrian mall at the same time? And the answer was to kind of cut the street in half. And they have, I think there must be another picture. Yeah, there you can see the little barriers that would open and close. Deliveries could happen first thing in the morning, and it wouldn't affect pedestrians very much. And on the left, you'll see there's a bit of a seating area that's on the church's property. That's a concept. There's quite a few barriers to make that happen, but not impossible. Yeah, I think that's it. Patios, again, are against the buildings, and the sidewalks would be outside of the patios. I guess that's what's happening there now on that street. Okay, so we're on Queen Street, right up by the box office stairs that go down. The sidewalk is widened to be a more appropriate width, and that means shrinking the drive lane on Queen a little bit to add to the sidewalk. As you all know, when you walk down Queen Street right there, you are beside a concrete wall and parked cars, and it's sometimes quite narrow. So this will address that challenge. They also have a beautiful planted corner right up the Cow's Corners, has beautiful plantings and a little bit of a water feature that kind of teams with the stair water feature they have there. This is Great George Street, looking at Province House, of course. Again, a brick treatment for the road that matches the two pedestrian streets. They're suggesting planting the biggest trees we can on the left side of the street there to try and balance out the very mature trees on the right side of the street. And of course, beautiful plantings and gardens. This is a top-down and a 3D image of the Great George kind of intersection with Victoria Row. Definitely the feedback from the general public was that they like fountains and water features, but if you asked Parks Canada, they're dead against it because they have to maintain it. So I'll reserve my opinion because it doesn't really matter, but anyways, Parks is in charge of their grounds, so if they don't like a fountain, we're not going to get a fountain. But nonetheless, that's what we heard. Yeah, sometimes they're the stewards of the day that look after it, and they're making long-term decisions. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. So this is just a 3D kind of aerial image of the whole area. It's very, very beautiful. I'll draw your attention to the church parking lot. as you guys know, the pavement goes right to the edge of the sidewalk in that area, and technically over their property boundary even. And it would be very nice to beautify the edges of that parking lot. And frankly, the parking lot is built on the ruins of the Queen Square School. There's still foundation bits below the parking lot. There's no drainage. So there's a lot of work that could be done there. We don't own it. It's owned by the church. So the only way we can do the work is if it's purchased or if there's a long-term lease put in place, and both of which are being pursued by the Legislative Assembly now. So hopefully something will happen there and it'll pave the way for us to pave the lot. There's a fly-through. I don't know if you guys want to do that, or it just does those 3D images on a fly-through. So that's the gist of the project. We need kind of a champion, or we need somebody to start pushing it for this to happen, like the political will to be there. So far, this was done in 2020. It's kind of been just sitting, waiting till now. I can say that Parks Canada is actively going down the road of their landscaping project right in front of the building. This is one of the influences they're using. So it's us now, the city. What's the low-hanging fruit for us? What do we tackle first? And from conversations we've had, it seems like that strip on Great George right in front of Province House is maybe a logical step, and or Sydney Street. There's been a lot of debate about that being a pedestrian mall for several years. There are challenges there, but no deal breakers, I don't think. So that's a run through the project. When this was presented to us, it was 1 hour and 20 minutes. So I just gave you the Coles notes in 10 minutes without much of the explanations. So bear in mind.
Thank you, Aaron. Questions of Aaron? Suggestions, issues? I have one question is, how did the Catholic Church get a hold of the parking lot? Because I was the last graduating class from Queen Square School in 1962, going from grade 6 to grade 7 at Birchwood. And at that time, the city owned the city. It was the city school system. They didn't own the property, but did the church at that time own the property? One would assume, or bought it since. Anyway, they're very protective of that. Of
They are
course,
very protective.
It's used twice, I guess, on the weekends and morning mass. So
Yeah.
yeah.
When I
okay.
spoke to them, or when we spoke to them, there were 2 points for them that were key. One is that lot generates a monthly annuity for them
Yes.
through parking.
Sure.
And 2 is it provides parking for their
Their
for
congregation.
churchgoers. So those are the 2 things they want kept in place, to which I'm told the Legislative Assembly has satisfied. They've said yes, no problem. Well, they're getting a lump sum for the lot if it's purchased.
Yeah.
So that takes care of the monthly amount and guaranteed them the Sunday parking.
And Mr. Chair, I think, are they not on a 99-year lease with the church?
I don't think so, Mr. Mayor. I could be wrong, because if there's a 99-year lease in place, then we shouldn't have a problem with going in and making some upgrades.
That's right.
Because that was one of the 2 options in terms of paving the way for us to do work.
Could I ask, Mr. Chair, there's been a lot of talk about Sydney Street as a pedestrian or pedway or a pedestrian mall. Dorchester Street and King Street is coming up with some of the owners down there. Now, I know this Province House district stops at Richmond Street or Victoria Row, but really the historical district goes right to the water. And the last time I know that, again, our interim CAO was here when we did the restoration of Queen Street, cobblestone, trees and so forth. It was a CADC-led project with funding coming from ACOA, the city, the province. Is there any appetite to, the Confed they need to put together their funds to do what they want to do. But is there an appetite to look at the Dorchester King as part of extending that Province House historic district?
Great question. The property owners would desperately say yes. They want us to go down and improve their streets. There's 2 remaining, right? They've all been redone over the years. Victoria Row, Sydney, and then nothing, and then water. So there's 2 streets there that have yet to be addressed. When we started this project, we were warned by the funders about scope creep for this project. You could always add and add and add more streets to this project. So they've kind of forced us to draw lines in terms of where we are going to design. But I don't see why we couldn't just continue the treatments down toward the water. But I mean, first things first, it'd be nice to get one of these things going. And if down the road we can do it on those streets too, I think that would be a good thing.
Right, but the Confederation Center is a block owner or half a block owner. Province House, which is under Parks Canada, have a $90 million investment in the restoration of Province House. And then there's also funds that will be going to the outside exterior interpretive areas. That's why I think the fountain idea is not part of their plan. They're looking at more of an Indigenous connection, colonial connection, just going beyond the walls of the Province House. So that's a long-term plan. But again, use your term, the low-hanging fruit would be Dorchester and King, that we could work with CADC, other levels of government to bring them up to similar standards or the same standards as Victoria Row, and now what we're looking at Sydney Street. Is that something that you might want to look at?
Here are my thoughts on it. One of the bigger things on those 2 streets would be the power lines. They've been undergrounded on the other streets and not on those 2 streets. King Street is a main trunk for power lines, so it's a lot of power lines, and that's quite expensive to bury them. And then we also bump into the notion that, well, you did it on that street over there, I want my power lines buried over here on the other side of Queen. So that stuff will happen. The other challenge is that there's almost no commercial activity on those 2 streets. So there's rationale on the other ones to say it's commercial activity and that's why we're doing this. But when it's just a residential street, what's the rationale to spend $800,000, to bury power lines and whatnot? So that's what we have to wrestle with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think we'll anchor back to the public works, the public meeting aspect of life here. Does anyone are we going to put a resolution forward? Did somebody mention you're going to be presenting to other standing committees or departments on this
I
issue?
will present to whomever asks of me.
Just public works.
Just public
It
works.
says public works, but it was got, okay, do we have a mover of resolution?
So I don't think we need a resolution. We just need a support from the committee to move to a public meeting, I believe, to gain public input.
Well, there's a section of the MGA 123 says that all actions of committees and council will be done by resolution or under a bylaw. But I'm not in this to argue if you guys are happy with doing otherwise, but you know what I mean? It's, well, you need a recommendation at the minimum. Okay, you want to? Well, we don't use consensus anymore because we. Yeah.
And if you go to a public meeting, it'll be led by Public Works, but by the council.
Yeah. How about this? How many are in favor of going to a public meeting on this issue of collaboration between CADC, DCI, and the Public Works Department to move this presentation to a public meeting? All those in favor? 4-0. 3-0.
Public meeting, not fair to the residents to do it in the summer.
Well, we didn't put that in, but.
No, it's just that a lot of times we do these public meetings in the summer and it's not fair to residents. So it's just saying if we could do it in September or.
Public meetings usually called by the mayor.
Yeah. Good suggestion, very good suggestion. Summertime, not a good time. Fall time, great time.
Yep, we can aim for 1st September then. That should be no problem.
3-0
Yes.
recommendation affirmative. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Sarah.
Sure.
Maybe we could just have a little conversation with the goals here. So we have a public meeting. What's the goal here? So we'll have images. We're getting feedback. Then what? Where are we going with this? Is this with an eye of doing a project?
Well, then it will come back into this building
Yes.
here and go to council for approval.
That info,
Yeah.
Yeah.
visit it here, and
Yeah.
just see where we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you,
Mr.
Aaron.
Chair, and we're looking at September. Did you want to put it on the July meeting agenda, or like if Aaron needs more information, or do we need more information? Do we have to pass a resolution in July to go?
No.
Good, it is.
And it's going to be more of a open house versus a public meeting. We're not going to have
Excellent
people
idea.
standing up chatting. I know we haven't really discussed it, but my image or in my head is we have, posters and pictures, and people can either write on it, put sticky notes on what they like, what they don't like.
Yeah.
I meet with us, the team from Fathom as well, discuss various issues, and then take all that feedback back here, make adjustments to the plan, and present that back to committee for it to be moved on to council to be accepted as a master plan for the city.
And it'll be done after Labor Day.
Yes, we will make sure it's done, and we'll even avoid the day after Labor Day.
Got it. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is just a annual tender that we went out with this year. It's a shared one with water and sewer. They get quotes for their work. We get a quote for our work. And so in the attachment, Lee McDonald construction was a low bid at $58 per hour. But then we also include the other two in the support page, just the event that Lee McDonald can't provide a backhoe that day. He does. Sometimes we need 3 backhoes and he only has 2. So we just also include the other prices just so that if Lee's unavailable that day, we move on to the next contractor. But we will issue our primary purchase order will be for Lee McDonald Construction.
Mr. Chair, Scott, did we not just pass this?
You pass one for water and sewer rates, not for public works rates.
For Lee McDonald?
So the one that Public Works we did. So it's a little complicated. We do 2. We do one solely for backhoe and truck, which is a rate for both of those together, and what we charge to that purchase order is for any of the culvert resets that we do around the city, any of that stormwater work, because we need the truck and backhoe. This is for, we need a bit of work with sidewalks or
No, I understand what it is.
work.
You
Yeah.
just, a council 2 weeks ago, we just did Lee McDonald.
That's
So
correct.
that was for sewer and water.
That was for water and sewer. That's correct.
Okay, that's all. I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, do we have a mover?
Sure, I'll move it.
Moved by Councilman Yankoff, second by Councilman Ramsey. Further discussion on this backhoe record? Thank you very much.
Chair, before we move into closed session, I just wanted to let Scott know, just a big thank you they got the flags replaced down at the Confederation Landing. It was quite a process, just with a lot of obstacles in their way, and I just want to thank them. They look really, really nice. Oh, yeah, they look good, thank you.
Great. Into the closed session, we're going to do a couple of, under the introduction of business. Mayor Brown brought up street access bylaw, and the second one was the state or status committee on parking.
Committee, and Mr. Chair, on the parking committee, I know that there is Scott Adams, Don Allen, Aaron Hansen, Wayne Long, Mark King, Kim McKenzie, Peter Norton.
Correct.
And it's something that come up at our last regular monthly meeting about what's happening in Halifax with the parking ticket forgiveness program. Is that being discussed is that on the agenda? Or on the
Absolutely.
radar?
So what we are working, I guess, right now we're trying to meet every week. We want to get a good document done fairly quickly. If you take too long to meet between meetings, things get slowed down or get pushed to the side of your desk. And so as of right now, we kind of have done an overview of the current parking, needs of the city, and talked about a past study that was done, I believe, in 2008 or 2010. And now what we're doing is going through and looking at various themes to discuss. And one of the themes will be incentives. So we are looking at best practices around North America, including Atlantic Canada, and bringing those to the table for a roundtable discussion for all the parties. And then we'll make our recommendation to bring forward to committee and council what we're recommending for every aspect of parking, whether it's incentives, future parking expansion or plans, zones of paid parking, residential parking, every aspect we're trying to include in this overall strategy, because it's quite a large file when you start looking at the various pieces that go into parking in the downtown core. So we want to try to get an all-encompassing strategic plan that works not only for the city but for the business community and the residents, because we're all linked very closely downtown. So we're trying to get that plan, and again, trying to hit all those key themes that touch on all the needs that we need to include in this strategic plan.
And Mr. Chair, I'm glad that Scott brings that up, because there is a Canadian Parking Association. They do have annual conferences. Might be a website to check out. But Scott, last week I was down on Lower Queen, and you had the yellow colored meters, which I didn't know were for 30 minutes, and your blue meter is for 2 hours. There was a tourist that was trying to put a loonie in it, and I said, no, I think it takes quarters, but it's only for 30 minutes. Is that a best practice in other jurisdictions?
Yes. It depends. Again, we have to, that's when we start getting into the fine details of the plan. You need to go almost block by block, space by space, depending on what's in front of where you're parking at. You could have a business that is a takeout only diner, for instance. I'm just using that as an example, and they want to see some turnover, right? Every 15 minutes, like that's all it should take for you to come in, get your meal, and go out. So we don't want people tying up those spaces in front of that business for 2-4 hours at a time when they're trying to get in, the person that's coming to pick up their meal in and out. So that will likely be part of the overall study, and that's typically a moving target, because that changes year to year, because we get different businesses may leave the downtown core and a new businesses open up. Like a great example is we had Starbucks there, and now we have an office supplies there on Queen, right? Different businesses, different type of clientele, and those are things that without one of the recommendations that's going to come from the strategic plan is a parking authority or a parking manager, some sort of city department of sorts, or a manager that looks after it, and because it's quite a large file and it's being managed by various departments, and it's getting to the point where you need one individual or team to look after it, because there's so much change in the downtown core every month even, and so we need to have one person who's the quarterbacks all that, so that we can fix these issues instead of just keep pushing them down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. An example of that also is right across here at the post office. Nobody should be parking for more than a half hour in front of the post office. They're supposed to drop in, get their mail, and go.
Exactly. Like we should make a space there for 1 or 2 spaces for a 15-minute or 30-minute parking. There, yeah.
Actually, downtown convenience store.
Yeah.
Yes, that's where it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, we don't always read the fine print, but the fine print is inside the meter for 30 minutes only. I didn't know that until I spoke to one of our meter hornets.
Yeah, and that's the complicated part too. Is how do you distinguish a tourist? Right, you have to look very closely. It's a challenging solution, and every city has their challenges, and some solutions work and some don't, and those are things that we'll try to look at. But again, the recommendation of a parking authority or parking manager or team, they will be able to actually take those projects and fine tune those processes and monitor it, because right now there's no one team looking after that.
And I'll send you some information from Halifax and the parking ticket forgiveness program.
Thank you, Scott. Your worship, you want to talk a little bit about street access
Just, Mr.
bylaw?
Chair, this street access bylaw, I brought it to the attention of Mr. Alex Forbes.
Yes.
As you know, construction takes place on any development.
Yeah,
And if you're dealing with new virgin land, there's mud in, mud out.
yeah,
And I was asking planning and development,
Yeah.
who's responsible for keeping the roadways, streets cleaned? And he mentioned that it could fall, and it may fall under street access bylaws. So again, we have developments going on around the city, and there are a number of residents that are concerned about the heavy truck traffic going in and out. And this heavy truck traffic, if it's wet, and if it's dry, it's mud all over the place, or sand or dirt blowing all over the place. So we must have some authority on ensuring that we can mitigate those disruptions during construction.
It's extremely challenging because contractors, they just want to build.
I
They
know.
don't want to clean. And really the only metric, they have to. They know they have to keep the public right of way clean. And anytime we call, they'll get to it. And they typically do get right to it. But until that call comes to them, a lot of them, some of them do take the initiative, some don't. Some may not even know it's happening because it's a subcontractor. So there's a number of variables that are happening. But typically it's once they receive a phone call from either my office or might be the bylaw office, that's when they typically take action. But it's a extreme challenge. It's a it's an enforcement matter, and to monitor that across the board is quite challenging. So
you know what I would do, Mr. Adams? I wouldn't call. They don't call to tell you setting up a traffic trap or a speed trap on Mount Everett Road. You know, we're setting the roadside check here, and we're getting everybody for registrations, impaired driving or speeding, whatever. So I don't know why you would call the contractor and say, you better get that cleaned up. I'd send the police officer out and, like he would do to us.
But we again, even if likely the police could go ticket the truck. I'm not sure what that would fall under traffic act, but there's probably something out there. But there's still the case before they even get out there. There's a whole bunch of mud being tracked out there, so we do have to call the contractor, and they're responsible for cleanup.
But if they get 2 or 3 tickets without being called, they will be proactive and keep
They could, they potentially could. Yep.
And Mr. Clay,
Yeah, I agree.
Does it fall under public works or does it fall under planning? That's my question. Who do they
It
phone?
falls under police.
Yeah, so who do they phone? Do they phone?
Most people call us, the public works department,
Okay,
because
so
it's on
that's
the
all I
roadway.
need to know.
Yep.
Yeah, I know they've been calling planning saying, well, we'll look into it, but again, they're looking at the bylaws that they are responsible to or responsible for, and I don't know if the follow-up always happens. So, Public Works, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'd say police, but
Your
police
Worship,
do the fining around here, you know what I mean? Most of it, anyway.
Your Worship, the streets themselves fall under Public Works.
Yeah.
So I would think that they, as the owner of the streets, the caretaker of the streets, it would be the Public Works Department who would deal with people who are dirtying their streets.
But I say if it's in a bylaw, it's the
I'm
enforcement
not
of the
sure.
bylaw.
I'm not sure if it is in a
Yeah.
bylaw.
Yeah.
It may be just you don't dirty my streets.
Thank you, folks. Moving on, we have, we should be moving into the closed session right about now. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor Ramsey, that we will move it into closed session as per section 119, bracket 1, closed bracket, subsection E and F of the PI.